Hey, everybody. Welcome to Midwest Paratalk Radio. I am Greg. That is Deb. We have Nicolle joining us tonight.
Hey, Nicolle.
We'll be talking to her about her experiences and get the lowdown on her. Remember, you guys watching live on YouTube at Midwest Paratalk Radio. You can also join our new Patreon site. Just join on there, get all the details by clicking the link. It'll be in the description below. And Nicolle, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to be here tonight.
Us too.
Yeah, we're excited too. This is your inaugural podcast / show or whatever.
That's right. That's right.
It's going to be great. I know it will be.
Yeah.
Podcast / show.
Well, okay. We were, it's Midwest Paratalk Radio. And so, I mean, I don't think of it as a podcast as much as I think of it as internet radio.
Right. Cause that's where we started.
Yeah.
Yeah. Way back in the day when we were both young.
Yeah. If you ever get a chance to go on the NPR, the YouTube page, and take a look at some of those old videos from when we first started. We started before video, even. We were just doing talk radio, and we were using Skype to do it. And he had some kind of weird technical stuff there to hook it all together on his end. So, and now we use StreamYard, and it's so easy.
It is. Okay. It is very easy.
I'm glad.
Right. So, Nicolle, tell everyone who you are and a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump right into it.
Sounds good. So my name's Nicolle, and I am from Michigan. I grew up in the Chicago area, but I was born in Michigan in the Detroit area in Warren. And I moved to Chicago when I was 4. And then I just recently moved back to just a couple towns away from where I was born. A lot of things brought me here, but I'm a lifetime fully conscious experiencer, which means I am an alien abductee. It's interesting for me to be talking about this publicly. It's something I've dealt with my entire life. But yeah, I've been dealing with what people call gray aliens ever since I can remember. In fact, my first memory is of a gray alien when I was probably a little bit older than a toddler in my crib when I was a baby. So yeah, this has been with me my entire life.
Interesting. Now, when you say, I guess, do you know why or like why they chose you, why you were being abducted, like kind of what their story was? Do you have any idea as to why, or it was just one of those things that how it happened? And
I mean, I have a lot of theories. I don't have any answers, but I have plenty of theories. I am not the only person in my family that has had this happen to them. So and it goes back to my grandma. And as far as I know, before that, she was Native American, and sometimes I wonder if that had something to do with it. But yeah, I think in my case, it's a generational study. Is what I would think. And like I said, this isn't just something that, I woke up one day and it was happening, or, a one-off or whatever. I mean, I've only known this experience from childhood. Yeah. So I don't know, this existence any other way. It's just something I've always, a double life, I have to say, that I've dealt with, where I've got this weird stuff going on at night, and then I got to go be a normal human being during the day, pretty much.
Yeah, been there, done that for like 65 years.
Right. It's a lot.
Do you, if you had paranormal, quote unquote, experience along with your alien abduction experiences, you know what I'm talking about. We've talked about this.
Yeah. I mean, I would consider a lot of the stuff that's happened to me, people would phrase it as paranormal. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily know if it's paranormal. Mm-hmm. I've had some stuff that might be considered like apparitions or ghost type stuff, but like I said, I don't know how much of it is these beings like messing with us, to be honest, because I've had a very playful relationship with them in many aspects, where it seems like they're literally, I don't know if you're familiar with the term creepy crawling, but it's, when you go and mess with somebody just to kind of mess with their head, like I kind of feel like that happens a lot in a playful way.
Okay.
So yeah.
You don't have you have fear with it at all? Were you afraid of it when you were younger? Or is it just something that you've had your whole life, and it's just like if you're like me, you just thought it was just life. That's everybody had it. You know what I mean? So it didn't really scare you as much, or.
When I was a kid, it wasn't scary that I can remember. I mean, maybe uncomfortable and a little bit odd at times, but not really scary. It wasn't until I was in my teens that it got really frightening. And I mean, to this day, when I feel something coming on, like I'm sure Deb can relate to this, but a lot of times when they're around, you can feel kind of like there's a charged energy in the air. Your hair starts standing on end, and you can just feel it's like an electric feeling, almost like being around a live wire. Like if you've ever been around a live wire, that's very much the kind of feeling it is. And so, it's something that you definitely, you can feel with your whole body. And as I get older, it's not that it's gotten less scarier, but I know how to deal with it a little bit better.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I gotta say, when it's happening at that moment, it is pretty scary. Or like waking up in the middle of the night and having a being standing next to your bed. It is definitely scary. I think it's a human instinct. I mean, to be honest.
Shocking. I always say, it's still shocking, even though I'm not have the same kind of fear. It's still just like, when you're standing at the sink doing dishes and someone walks up behind you and they're, reaches over to touch you and they don't mean to, but you're startled. So that's kind of like the thing.
Yeah.
Are you, and you're still having experiences today then, even up today?
Yeah. The last one I believe was on the 10th of April. So just a little bit over a month ago. Yeah. And I wanted to say more about the paranormal stuff. A lot of the paranormal events that have happened to me would be considered poltergeist type stuff. So we're talking
about that.
Yeah. So with that, I have always gotten the feeling that it is the beings kind of around, like stuff. I mean, when I was a kid, this one time, my friend and I were over at my house. We were alone. My dad was out at work, and we just, we were in the kitchen laughing, joking around, and then we went into the family room, and we just heard like all this stuff falling on the floor. And we went in the kitchen. Everything that was on the counter was on the ground. Like everything in the entire kitchen that was on the counter was on the ground. And so we ran out screaming, terrified. But to this day, I still think I don't necessarily think like there's, poltergeists running around. I think it's more with the beings. Yeah.
Okay. When you say that, do you mean like with just your accounts of activity, or do you think that it's all like types of that poltergeist, let's say?
Yeah, I can't say that I know. I haven't lived through anybody else's shoes. But I can suspect that some of it is at least some of it is probably, attributable to the what we call aliens. Yeah. For sure.
Well, Deb and I have said for years, we can even say probably over a decade. Wow. You're old. That there is a correlation. There's a correlation between the paranormal and UFOs. It seems like, we were talking in a show not too long ago where we were having kind of the same conversation, but when Mothman was seen, when the bridge collapsed, and that was what, Pennsylvania?
Think so.
Yeah, I think it is.
Or
was
Virginia, West Virginia, or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Over there.
Over on the East Coast. But along with people seeing Mothman, there was also claims of UFOs in the area when that was happening. And it kind of started a dialogue with Deb and I. It seems like you when you see one event, you're going to see the other one. I mean, it might not be in the same night because, you're inside, but plus or minus a day. And it seems to hold true. In my case, I know, I've, of course, didn't really know anything about UFOs or aliens or anything of that nature until Deb. And then
Every show he blames me. I don't know why.
It's all right, Deb. I
it,
get
it,
stuff all the time.
it wasn't until Deb that I think that I started paying attention.
That's probably more
And
it.
yeah, and started seeing things in the sky. But I mean, it's kind of to me, it's kind of walking hand in hand. That
So I question the experiences that you have. Are they how would you describe them? Do you some people describe their experiences as learning, like classroom sessions. Other people have medical exams. I mean, does yours? I'm gonna guess that since you're a lifelong experiencer, it's kind of run the gamut of that whole situation. Can you describe those a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So when I was a kid, it's the stories are so bizarre, but it's, that's what happened and it's what I remember. And a lot of screen memories when I was a kid. So the first like abduction experiences that I remember is I lived on the third story of an apartment building in Berwyn, Illinois. And at night after my family was asleep, what I saw as the best explanation I can give is a 3-ring circus master, but like a puppet or like a cartoony version of one. And it would step into my window pane and sit on the ledge and then put the other leg over as if it was stepping from the ground into my third story window.
Wow.
Yeah. It was pretty crazy. But so that would come into the window, and then it would stand up and come next to the bunk bed. My brother and I had double bunk beds. I was on the bottom, and it would grab my hand and take me out of bed, walk me up towards a wall that wasn't near the door or the window. I'm not exactly sure why this happened, but we always ended up at the wall. I guess it would be on the east side of the room. And there was this big, I always called it like a Muppet, but the more I think about it, it would kind of look like a Where the Wild Things Roam type of furry, big, large creature. So we're talking about a 3-ring circus master that looks like a puppet, and a big furry Muppet looking thing would come into my room and then take me towards this wall. And the next thing I know, I was on what I can now consider to be a spaceship with a bunch of grays walking around. They would have me playing with other children with like weird toys that I'll explain a little bit more. But also I would be playing with hybrid children. So it was like human children, and they would be, all the human kids were in their nightgowns. So I looking back, I feel like they were all picked up. They might have their toys with them, their stuffed animals. And then there would also be hybrid kids. And there'd be these weird like light toys where the grays would tell me, I don't know if they were telling the other kids, because, this is all, ESP. So it's not like they're talking out loud. This is, I'm all hearing in my head, but, they're telling me like, oh, like this is a game you have to play, like learn how to like do these different lights with your mind, or make this levitate, or they would show me things on a big screen on the wall that was basically, it was pretty horrific for somebody that young, but like wars and famines and natural disasters and stuff like that. And they would tell me, this is the future of humanity if you guys don't do something about it. Kind of, not in those words, but that was the kind of sentiment that they had. So in the beginning, it was very much feeling like them teaching me how to do things like telekinesis, ESP, different psychic abilities. And then they would also be teaching me about stuff that could be happening in the future. So at the very beginning, it was very much a learning experience. And like I said, I also felt like I might have been teaching the hybrid kids, like how to play, how to be more human, because they would always have us play with hybrid kids. So, and this wasn't just me, this was me and my brother were taken together. So my brother also has memories, similar memories, not exactly as detailed as me. He doesn't like to go into it, but similar memories. Once I got to be puberty age, it basically switched over to what was much more negative in my opinion, because it was very much, physical and psychological experiments. So lots of different physical experimentation that was not pleasant. It was very scary. It was painful. And I had physical effects that would last after the experiences. So I would be in a lot of pain afterwards sometimes. So it was definitely scary that would happen. So went through a lot of experimentation, like through what I would say is my like peak childbearing years. And then once I hit my mid 20s, it seemed like that aspect of it might have died down a little bit. Although I do have an interesting story that I don't know if this will work for everybody, but so in my case, when I was like 19 or 20, probably, I was in my living room. There was nobody else up in the house because I'm a night owl. I can't sleep. It has a lot to do with the phenomena. It's just, you never know what's going to happen. So it's hard to sleep. And I still deal with insomnia. It's not as bad, but I still do. But so I was watching TV one night and I got this overwhelming sense that they were there, that they were coming. They were about to show up. And I just freaked out. I was terrified. So I said out loud, if you guys keep doing this to me, I'm going to go effing crazy. And I said this out loud. If you keep letting me remember this, I'm going to go crazy. They immediately left. Like everything went back to normal, completely calm. And after that, I really don't have any memories of being on board. So I don't know if, I feel like we had a contract that we made together where they decided to like, let me have some boundaries for once. But so, yeah, it went from playful learning to, almost completely physical. And then after that, when I was in my 20s, it's just been really bonkers, weirdos kind of stuff. So even weirder than playing with hybrid kids on a spaceship, but yeah.
Well, don't feel, just you're amongst friends. So I hope you feel comfortable enough to tell us about some of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So once I got into my 20s, it seemed like they took a lot more interest in relationships that I was having, like my day-to-day life. It seemed like they took more of an interest. And
at this point, were you like having almost daily contact?
It's not, I don't think it ever, well, okay. So I guess there was a period in my 30s that it was many times a week.
Okay.
So it was never every day, but there's never been a point in my life where it's been longer than 6 months that I haven't had something happen. Mm-hmm. So it's right now it's like maybe once or twice every like 2 to 3 months. But yeah, when I was in my teens, it was very frequent, a couple times at least. I would say at least 4 or 5 times a month. And then in my 20s, in 30s, especially my 30s, there became this period of time where it was, multiple times a week. It was a lot to deal with. But like I said, I don't have any memories of actually being like brought anywhere after, we made that, which I was called a contract. We made that contract. And I felt like they respected that. But the thing is then they started showing up in my house with my ex-partner, just walking around the house while we're both awake at night. So it's
did your ex-partner have any experiences or remember seeing anything?
Oh yeah, she remembers all of it. I mean, she was right there with me, and it wasn't like we were falling asleep or we woke up, or we're talking about like we're up doing stuff, it's late at night. It was always when we lived with my dad at the time. I was helping take care of him. He had some health issues, but it was always when he was out of town. All of a sudden we would have like literal gray aliens walking around my living room while we're awake. Like just, we'll be walking to the kitchen, we'll look into the living room, and there'll be a 5-foot gray alien standing in my living room.
It's a little
just chilling out and
stunning,
just watching. And
yeah,
that's not creepy.
And they would just take off. Like, we'd see them, like we'd run in the room every single time. Like I said, like there's a fear that we can't get over. So like you're just walking, doing your own thing, going to make a snack in the kitchen, and you look over and you see an entity, in the other room. It's going to freak you out. Like no matter how used to it you are. So of course we both book it. And then by the time we go back, there wouldn't be anything in there. But yeah, after in my 30s, we'd see them walking around the backyard. And when we go out at night and take we go on walks, they would frequently follow us. And yeah, it was a lot. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you think the reason for that is? Do you?
I don't know if I necessarily want to get into that here.
Okay.
I guess the best thing I can say is that they weren't necessarily happy with some of the life choices I was making, and they were making a very big stand.
Statement. They're making a statement.
It
Yeah.
was a statement. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. I just wondered. I thought because a lot of people like me and you, feel like they have something they have to do. They have a job or something that their mission or a destiny of some kind. I just wondered if that was part of it for you too.
Yeah, unfortunately they haven't articulated what that is. But
yeah.
Yeah,
I kind of make you guess a little bit, I guess.
Right. I always say, why do they have to show up at like 2 a.m. in the desert when you're driving alone or you got one other person with you? Like, why can't it be at noon in like a beautiful field of flowers with a picnic basket and a blanket and say, hey, let's have a conversation? Like, it's never like that, unfortunately. I wish it was. But so, no, I don't really necessarily know what my role is in this. I do think there's a planetary mission or goal, and I think that all of us experiencers are pieces in that. I do believe that, but I can't say that I know for sure what it is. I am one of those people that felt compelled, I guess some people might call it a calling, in 2020 2021 to finally start reaching out to my community and maybe talking about it openly. So I feel like they do want my voice out there. I feel like that might be part of it. And also, like I said, since I was a little kid, they were showing me all these terrible things that's going to happen to the earth, if we don't do something about it. So I feel like they want me to speak about that as well. And I think we're seeing a lot of that come to pass now. A lot of the things that I had been shown and told about when I was young are happening, especially with climate change. So, yeah. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of questions. When I had a million of them and I didn't write them down in my head. I'm trying to think of questions. I want you to just be comfortable and talk about what experiences you've had that have really stuck out to you, stand out to you.
There are so many, it's hard to pick from them, but one of the ones that I talk about when, talking about like the big experiences, the really shocking ones. And I have to say, I consider myself to be a contagious abduction, a case of contagious abduction, because it seems like almost everyone that gets close to me in my life ends up becoming an experiencer.
That's what Greg says. I'm contagious. So
I think it's a thing. I think it's real. And
yeah, it probably is.
Yeah, I theorize that it's because they're interested in your interpersonal relationships. And so they want to check out, who you're interacting with. But so almost all of my ex-partners have had experiences with me. And one of which was I had a partner who didn't really, he was nice. He kind of like pretended like he believed me, but not really. And then one night he was telling me, he was like, you're safe here. It's in your imagination. Like, it's not really happening. Everything's gonna be fine. And then he started saying some derogatory comments. And like immediately when that happened, he said, I remember sitting on the bed and him talking to me and then all the lights going out. And then the next thing I knew, he was kneeling in front of me, crying and screaming and shaking my shoulders, saying, Nicolle. And I'm just like, whoa, what is going on right now? And so I guess from his perspective, what had happened, and I lost like 15, 20 minutes there, was that right after he was talking smack, the lights went out in the room, the TV went to static, and then the light came in through the window, which was right next to the bed. And he said he could see like shadows of figures outside of the room. And then a blue orb flew into the room, flew into my mouth. And he told me a more edited story, but more recently he told me everything that happened. I don't know if it was because he was scared that he didn't want me to have all this information, because it's pretty scary. But so what he told me recently was that after the light flew in my mouth, suddenly 6 gray aliens, 3 short ones on one side and then 3 tall ones on the other side of a portal by the wall. A portal showed up with 6 gray aliens. He said that I floated out of the bed, that I was floating in the middle of the room with my head towards the portal and my feet away from it. and that he's like started freaking out because he was able to move. He remembers all of it. He went to grab my ankles, couldn't do anything. So his mom and his brother were in the other room, and he booked it to go get help. And when he went in there, he said that they were both frozen, like as if they were watching TV. But his mom was pouring a Diet Pepsi, I guess, right when it happened, out of a 2-liter bottle. So she was just dumping the whole thing all over the floor because she was stuck there and it was pouring. And so after he realized that they were both also frozen, he ran back in the room. He said, I was still in the middle of the room floating. And he was just, freaking out, screaming, crying. And next thing he knew, they all disappeared. I ended up in the exact same position in the bed, like instantaneously. I was floating to sitting in the middle of the bed again. They were gone. He ran up to me. That's when he started shaking me because he said that he didn't think that I had a pulse and I wasn't breathing. So he thought I was dead, I guess. And he was shaking me. And then that's when I came to. And I'm like, what is going on? And the next thing I knew, his mom walked in from the other room. And she said, hey, Joey, did you say something? And I'm like thinking like, this guy's screaming and crying in here right now. What do you mean? Did you just say something like coming in here? And then when he told me the story, the fact that, she had reacted to like thinking she heard him when she was, paralyzed by this whole event. It's just, it's an incredible story to me, that I had another witness to it. I've had many, many witnesses to it. But in this case, for somebody that didn't believe, for them to be like, no, we'll show you. Like, this is really happening.
I guess so. Yeah.
So, yeah. After that, he definitely believed me. And although he did say that after we broke up that he never had any more experiences after that. So he said that he knew that it was related to me, which all of my partners have said that. That they were like, yeah, this has happened to both of us, but we know that it's, precipitated by you.
Yeah.
That included my my last partner. She wasn't experienced it before I met her, which is one of the reasons we got along so well, was because I went into a relationship for the first time with an experiencer. And so I didn't have to hide any of these parts about me. I didn't have to try to convince somebody that this was happening to me.
Right.
Although she only remembered like maybe 3, experiences in her life. But when we got together and all this stuff started happening with me, she told me, she was like, like, I know that they used to come around for me before, but she's like, this is all you. Like, this doesn't have anything to do with me anymore. And I don't know why that is. Like, I don't, but I think it's interesting.
And I think they kind of direct people into our lives for whatever reasons. So, I mean, there must be something going on with them that you're needed to like bridge the gap or something. Bill had a question. I wanted to know if you'd had any strange phone calls.
Yeah, I definitely have had a very strange phone call. So again, this is my early 20s. I was doing a lot of traveling in my early 20s, and I was driving from Portland, Oregon. And I want to predicate this with saying, I think a lot of the traveling I was doing had to do with just how bizarre my life was. I didn't really prescribe to this, like to be a normal functioning member of society kind of thing. Like I was like, this world is really weird. We only get one, chance at life. So might as well, do everything that you want to do and, go out there and grab life, by the horns. But so I did a lot of traveling, and a friend of mine and I were driving from Portland, Oregon to Denver, Colorado. And while we were driving through, there's a section of Utah. I don't know if either of you have driven through Utah, but it's pretty incredible. All right. So there's a really big section where there's like nothing. Like there's a sign that says next gas station 120 miles. Get your gas now. Yeah. So, and it's extremely desolate. I mean, this is where a lot of our weapon testing type stuff goes on. And, it's like the quintessential alien backdrop that you could, like a scary, abduction scenery. Like that's it. But I've always been drawn to this area, and it's, I do have to say this, which I didn't find out until later. It was actually only like 30 miles from Skinwalker Ranch where this all happened.
Okay.
So yeah, it's right by Moab. So it's in a very, spiritually charged area. But so I told my friend, I tell anybody I think I'm going to get really close to about my experiences, because I figure that they're going to have experiences, and I need to know that they're going to be around and that they're okay with it. So I go into most relationships saying, okay, listen, I have a really strange life. Like just be forewarned. And So I told them about it again. Most people, they believe me, but they're not. You can't be convinced of something until you see it with your own eyes. I think experience most of the times, at least.
Plus, and once they get to know you, they begin to realize she's not crazy.
Yeah,
and they probably see stuff because you're a magnet. So
yeah, but so I was driving. We were on I-70, and it's like 1 or 2 in the morning, and I look over and I see a little, well, it's not little, but in the distance, a bright red light right over the hill. It was probably maybe a quarter of a mile away, but it was obviously, this was before drones were really big. This was in the early 2000s. So drones existed, but not, they weren't common. And I don't believe it was a drone, but so in fact, I know it wasn't a drone after everything that happened, but playing devil's advocate, it wasn't a drone. But so there was a light over the hill that was close. And so I pulled off on the side of the road and he's like, oh my God, like, I can't believe I'm seeing a UFO. You were right. Like, there it is right there. And then his phone that was off, suddenly it was like powered off. It suddenly turned on, and on the screen, it says, you have a message. We both looked at it, and then it went dead again. And I went, oh my God, that's my message. Like, that's the message. They just sent me a message. This is incredible. This is, wow, what a day. And so we get back in the car and start driving after a while because it didn't really move. And then it starts following the car. And I don't know why, but right before I started driving, I hit the odometer, like, so I could see how many miles I was driving. I don't know why I thought to do this, but I did it. And we're driving and driving, well over an hour. And this thing's following us the whole time. Pretty close. Not very close, but close enough that, it was freaking us out.
Close enough that you knew it was following you.
Oh, yeah. And, it wasn't making dramatic movements in the sky, but it was definitely making weird movements while following us. So, you could tell it wasn't a plane. It wasn't flying exactly in a straight line, all that. Mm-hmm. And so finally we get to a little town, which is Green River, Utah. And right when we're about to get off the exit, I look back and it shoots off. And I'm like, okay, is that it? And so we get into there's a gas station there. We get in and I look at the odometer and it's exactly 77.7 miles. And that's my lucky number. 777 is my lucky number. So I thought that was interesting. Mm-hmm. But so then my friend, I can't remember how he charged his phone, but he somehow got his phone back on. And all we can get though from his phone was that message that he got was his best friend back in Oregon calling him. And the voicemail that he left was, haha, Zorn, very funny. Like, either you just called me or aliens just left me a voice message. Yeah, I know. And so I'm like, I go pale. I'm like, what? And so I don't know why we couldn't listen to his phone, but we ended up going to the payphone inside the gas station to talk to him. And his friend played us the voicemail message. And oh my gosh, Deb, I still can't believe what I heard. And boy, do I wish I had a recording of it, but I'll tell you why I didn't in a minute, which I'm sure you all can guess. But so what it said there was like a gargling kind of noise in the back, which almost sounded like vocalizations. Uh-huh. It sounded really silly if I tried to do it right now. I guess I could a little. It was like oh in the background, and then in the foreground there was like this robotic sounding female voice, and so it sounded like a translator, pretty much. And it said, Nicolle and Zorn, stop the car. And then it said something like, don't be afraid. And then you couldn't really tell what it said. The next part was garbled because we were listening through a payphone to a voicemail recording. So it wasn't, exactly, what he was hearing. But it said, stop the car, don't be afraid. And then couldn't really tell what it said. And then it ended with, we love you, Nicolle. We love you, Nicolle. We love you, Nicolle. We love you, Nicolle. And then,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so I just started crying, like, because this is, for me, it's like somebody who really believes in God but doesn't have any proof of it, really, besides for anecdotal and, other witnesses. This was like hearing the voice of God to me. And so it floored me. I'm like, I almost passed out. And my friend's like, I can't believe you're freaking out so much. And I was like, are you kidding me right now? Like, we just got a voicemail message from aliens. Like seriously.
And why wasn't your friend freaking out?
Yeah.
No, he was also freaking out, but he was like surprised at how much I was freaking out because he was basically like, well, how are you used to this kind of? And I'm like, not getting voicemail messages, but
no.
Yeah. So I had a feeling that it was going to disappear before I could get a hard copy of it. So I was never able to go get the actual recording of it because me and this guy ended up ending on bad terms like during that trip. So I wasn't able to ever go get an actual recording of it from that guy, but his friend, which I still think is incredible that they didn't just put it on his phone. They went through his phone, found his best friend's number, and then left the voicemail on that guy's phone.
That's bizarre.
Yeah. And that the guy knew that it was for us. Like
it was like intentionally pulling more people in to witness this, you know?
Yep. And it was through the voicemail looked as if Zorn had called him and left the message, but that phone was dead that whole time. So I know that he didn't call him.
Wow.
And so I had him play me later on, I had them play me the voicemail message through the phone, and then I recorded it with my phone. So I had it on my answering machine. And then I played it for as many people as I knew, because I was like, I want everybody to hear this before I try to get a hard copy, because I have a feeling this is going to disappear as soon as I try to, get this down. And lo and behold, it was 31 days before any answering messages were erased off your system. And it was 18 days in that I went to try to record it, and it was gone. So when I actually did try to record it, it was gone. So I don't have a physical copy of it. But yeah, so that was my phone call from aliens.
I've had my share of weird phone calls, so I could relate to that. And I appreciate the question, Bill, and I've heard a lot of people, a lot of experiencers who've had strange experiences with phone. I had a strange experience. One time I picked the phone up and it was dead air. And this was landline phone, it was just dead air, but I thought I could hear someone breathing. And I said something, and a man's voice came on and said, hang the phone up.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, no problem. And back then I had an answering machine. Remember, you used to have the answering machine that was separate from your phone.
That's the one that this got recorded on.
Yeah. And
my
for some reason, I came home one day and I had a bunch of messages on my phone, my answering machine, but it was my phone calling other numbers.
Wow.
My phone was making phone calls and my answering machine was recording it. I don't know what that was about. And then, of course, in the book, talks about when I was pregnant with my youngest son, the entire 9 months I was pregnant, I got a phone call every Wednesday at like 3 p.m. And at one time, my mom actually was there and she answered it and she heard it too. It was always the same thing. And when you spoke about that sound, that kind of weird, guttural, weird sound, and I had that. That's the voice that spoke to me. But in the background of that, it sounded like a factory section, like, and just factory noise behind it.
Yeah.
And it was speaking in some language that I didn't understand, but every time it called, it was a different emotion came through the phone to me. Sometimes when I would when I would answer it, I got to the point where I knew, okay, it's my caller, and I would just say hello and then listen. And sometimes it would just sound matter of fact, like it was stating facts, but I didn't know what the hell it was saying. And sometimes it sounded happy and sing-songy. I felt good and happy. And then there were a few phone calls when it actually scared me because it sounded pissed. And I've got this distinct feeling that there was whoever was on the other line talking to me was mad. And one time I said, like I said, my mom was there and she actually picked the phone up. And it started she said hello and she could hear it. She could hear it start in. So at least I had one person who could hear, this phone call like you, and that happened for the whole time I was pregnant. As soon as I gave birth, the phone call stopped.
Wow.
And then years later, I got a knock on the door, a young man dressed in a nice suit, dark suit and tie and everything. And I answered the door. I mean, it was a different time, you know what I mean? When you could still answer the door and not be too terribly
Right.
afraid. And he introduced himself. I can't remember who he said he was. And his name, he said that Bud Hopkins had given him my address. And he had a question he wanted to ask me about the phone calls that I had gotten when I was pregnant. And I got this. I immediately, the red flags, like, Bud didn't give you my address. He doesn't do that. But yet I'm like, you know, I don't really care if you want to know about the phone calls. I'll tell him. So I told him, yeah, I never let him in the house. We just stood there talking through the door. And then he said, all right, thank you. And he left. I don't even remember seeing what kind of car he got in. At least I don't remember right now, but
Wow.
yeah, I do. So definitely weird phone calls are a thing with folks like us.
Yeah, it's funny. I had no idea. Like because I personally have not read too much about the phenomena just because it's been so in my face and so personal. It's
Mhm.
actually kind of frightening for me to do that. I get a little
Mhm.
uneasy when I read stuff, and a lot of times it's like, well, yeah, that's the same stuff I'm going through.
Mhm.
So after I read it, I read some of the big ones like Missing Time and Communion and all that.
Mhm.
But after that, it was like I don't really need to keep reading about this because this is what's happening to me, and it's just the same thing over and over. I mean, it's always a little different, but
Yeah.
it's the same kind of themes. And so I was a little bit scared. Not to mention that I was always, even from a really young age, I don't know what it was. I don't know if they put this in me or not, but I was like, I don't want to research this too much because I don't want to worry that I'm getting anything from anything I'm reading. But
Oh, yeah, exactly. I know exactly.
so I stayed away from it.
And that was smart.
Yeah, but so I didn't know anybody else got phone calls, and so when I told somebody when I got in the community, I was like, you won't believe this, like I got an answering machine call, blah blah, and they're like, oh yeah, that happens to a lot of people. I was like, are you kidding me? They're calling everybody? Like, what is that? And what I just realized, which I think is weird, is that, like I said, the voicemail was left on a landline.
Mhm.
All of the stories I've heard where they called were on landlines. I haven't heard any stories about them calling on cell phones.
I haven't personally, that I'm aware of, unless somebody told me it, and then I wasn't made, aware of the fact that it was a
Yeah.
cell phone. Everybody that I've talked to with phone stuff has been landlines, as far as I know.
That's interesting.
And I know what you feel about. I know what you mean by. Um, Sometimes, well, it's a good idea, especially if you're actively being investigating your case, or somebody else is, to limit what you got going in, just so you don't subconsciously pick something up. And you know what I mean? Because that happens, and nobody does that on purpose, but
Yeah.
it's just the way we are
Yeah.
wired. But also, I found that, for instance, you said it kind of weirded you out that when you found out a lot of the other people do. When I first saw drawings of the gray aliens with the big eyes, I kind of lived the first part of my life thinking this happened to everyone and it was normal. And then um, that's how I lived with it. And I was comfortable with that. And then then weirder stuff started happening. I'm like, oh, it must have been a dream. I just, that can't happen. I must have dreamed it or something. But then you get confirmation from a bunch of other people from something that you haven't talked about to anybody. And it kind of kind of threw a monkey wrench in the way that I lived with it on a daily basis for a while. I had to change up my game, and figure out a new way to navigate through this new knowledge now that I had. You know what I mean? That sounds like you might have been wrestling with a little bit of that too.
I can remember exactly when I didn't really have the capacity to understand completely what was going on. But when it would have been after I was 6, but I believe it would have been, between 6 and 8. There was a Time Life Mysteries of the Unknown, I think it was, book series.
Yeah. The big black
the
ones.
big black ones. Yeah.
I have those.
Yeah. And so there's a UFO one, and I don't know if that was the issue, but I believe it was. It came out in 1986 was when those commercials started. But I remember seeing the commercial for one of those books, and they showed a bunch of drawings of different gray aliens, and a bunch of people, talking, like basically be like, yeah, I saw this and I saw this. And then the narrator said, how could all these people draw the same thing and they don't even know each other? And I remember turning to, I don't know if it was a relative or a friend, but I remember at, between 6 to 8, turning to somebody next to me and saying, why are they all drawing my friends? And so that's when I kind of started getting a name for what was happening. Yeah. But yeah, it wasn't until I was 12 where I finally told a good friend of mine that I'm like, I'm pretty sure that I'm an alien abductee. And she immediately believed me, which was, interesting for me. But yeah, it was definitely that Time Life magazine.
And guess what? My story is in there.
Oh, wow.
That's why I have it. The story of the intruders is in that, and the pictures of the backyard and the Bud Hopkins story and all that's in that book. That's why I have it. So that's kind of weird. Yeah, that's strange.
Yeah.
Now, do you recall like the interior of the ship that you've been abducted in? I mean, what was the texture? Were there windows, portholes? I mean, can you give us a description of what you're seeing?
Yeah, of course. Like I said, this is all from when I was much younger. And it was always, whenever I was on board or whenever I have no memory of them taking me from like my bedroom to a spaceship. Like I have no transition memory ever. Like I'm always in one place and I'm in the other place. Like I don't remember floating up into the wall, or I don't remember anything like that. So just a sudden transition from being where I was to being in this space, what I would now know as a spaceship. But it's never been like a dream. So for me, it's never been like, oh, that could have been a dream. I don't know. It never felt dream-like. What it felt like was being under sedation. So when I was on there, I was always really groggy and out of it. So, but my memory I have of it is, I remember being in the main room where I would play with the other kids. It was like a gunmetal, like a dark gray, like all the walls on the floor. And then there was like a stippling on the floor. So there was actually like some texture almost. I'm trying to think of what kind of like, I guess maybe in some workshops and stuff where they have those metal floors and there's like the kind of like a grate type of pattern
like
on
the
it.
Diamond plating.
Yeah, kind of like that. So it had texture on it. And then the walls were also very dark. So it was like a very dark gray on the inside of that whole room. I remember being in what I would call like an examination room, I guess, where that was like, it seemed to be a lighter gray, like more like a metallic gray. And the whole room was like that metally gray. Plus there was like these chairs that in both of the areas that would come out of the floor that were just like blocks, basically. Like it almost looked like it might have rose up right out of the floor, like that it was the floor and then it turned into a seat. It's hard for me to describe it without drawing it. But so yeah, like these benches basically that look like they just came out of the floor. I don't know if they were always there, if they came up and down for space. I have no idea. But so there was those. And then I remember being in a very white space when I was in my 20s. Being next to another human. And I remember being next to this other human and then seeing gray aliens in front of me. And that also seemed very much like an exam room type of thing, but it was very bright white. So, but besides for that, not too, I mean, I'd have to draw it to like accurately describe it. But, in the examination room, there was obviously an exam table type of thing. That was either like a flat slab or sort of like a chair type of thing. I don't remember any kind of like, I don't remember ever being, I kind of sort of remember being like held down, but I don't remember anything physically holding me down. Like I don't remember seeing like metal over my wrists or my legs. I just remember not being able to move. So I don't know if they use any kind of restraints, but yeah, there was basically just different variations of those three rooms. I mean, it seemed to be circular from what I could tell. So it seemed like I was in possibly a circular ship, or at least the layout had a lot of circles in it. The examination room was a little bit more, I guess, more of like a rectangle, but it still had a curve to the wall. But yeah, that's sometimes there'd be bright lights, like I said, in that white room that was really brightly lit. in the room when I was a kid, the gunmetal room, that the lighting was like kind of like spotlighting. So like where we would be playing with the other kids, there'd be like a light like beaming down on that area where we'd be playing, and then the surrounding would be dark. Not like black dark, but like darker than that area. So yeah. That's about it.
Do you ever feel like you wish that you could do something to make it all stop?
No. I've heard other experiences say this, but it's very true also in my case. I wouldn't know myself. I wouldn't know who I'd be a different person. So I wouldn't change anything about it. Again, it's all I've ever known. So I don't know what a life without this would be like. Not to mention that when they're gone for like up to 6 months, like I said, I miss them.
Yeah.
So even though it's not always pleasant, I'm like, I get sad. I'm like, oh, well, are they not going to come anymore? Like, do they not like me anymore? You know, am I not part of this program or whatever anymore? So I would definitely not change it. I wish there was more back and forth communication, and I wish there was more consent to this, you know, on our end. I know that some people do have it, but in my case, it's not so much. So I wish that it was more to take and a give than just, you know, on their time, whatever program they have going on. But there's nothing I would like better than for them to call me on the phone and to actually have a conversation with them. Like that would be nice.
Hey, what's up?
Right?
Yeah, I know. I've said that myself too. I would just, you know, don't quit sneaking it behind me and snatch me out of my car at night or whatever.
Right?
Just come, give me a call, text me. You know, come on over. You can sit at my table, and we'll just
we'll have a cup of coffee.
Right.
Bullshit
You know,
a little.
I don't like the sneaky backdoor stuff. You know, that's what scares me.
Yeah.
You just and if you know, and I'll ask you questions. You can ask me questions.
Totally.
Now, Nicolle, have you ever been approached by any other species other than gray?
So the three main, and I should say the two main, because it's not, I've only seen the third one a couple of times, but so I've seen the short grays, which are like, you know, 3 to 4 feet, maybe probably about 3 feet. The tall grays, which are like between 5 to 5.5 feet. And then I've seen a mantis a couple of times, and those are very intimidating. I do consider them to be part of the same group. So I don't think that the mantis is like a different, I mean, it could be a completely different race, but for whatever reason, it doesn't look different enough to me. Even though it does look mantis-like, it still looks more gray alien. It's just that praying mantis happen to look like gray aliens, I think. So, you know, that's why maybe they're definitely more intimidating than the smaller ones, and their energy is really intense.
The smaller ones, a lot of people seem to think that the smaller ones are more like android-ish or something.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. Yeah,
I've heard that. I don't know that I don't think all of them are, because I've, you know, encountered a little bit larger gray that's definitely had emotions and or, you know, something emanating from it. Then a lot of them didn't, but you know. So,
I always, sorry to cut you off.
No.
I always saw it as like the 3 foot ones were like the worker bees.
Yeah.
Like ants, like they did what needed to get done, and they didn't really interact with you that much. And then the tall grays were like the doctors and the psychologists, and they actually had somewhat of personalities and like emotions, and they would kind of talk to you a little bit, but they wouldn't really answer many of my questions. But they were the ones that frequently told me that they loved me, like when I was on shit. And this has happened since I was a little kid. They said that they were my family and that they loved me. I don't know if that was some kind of manipulation tactic to get me to go along with the program, or if it's true. I have no idea. But they did express, you know, like care for me. And I kind of do think that they do care for me, because I've had some really close calls in my life. And it seems like they might have stepped in as like a guardian angel type thing and helped me out. And then the mantis I look at as like the management that comes in when things aren't going the way it's supposed to go, and they get things back in line. So those are the 3 main types that I've seen. I have seen some really weird other stuff that I really don't know where to file it. But at the same time, I don't know if it's screen memories. And they're just showing like, okay, so one time I woke up and I was in my late teens, and I looked at the end of my bed, and there was a 6-armed, the only thing I can explain was that it was like an Indian deity like those the Indian
Yeah.
deity you see with 6 arms. It was dark skinned. It had a top knot, the whole thing, no shirt. I was like, you know what? And it telepathically said to me, I'm from the center of the earth. I need to tell you something. And then I blacked out. So that only happened once. I have no idea. I have no idea. Like, to me, with all this weird stuff that happens going to me, that's like, I don't know where to file that at all.
Right.
I saw what I guess would have been called a Bigfoot in the suburbs of Chicago when I was like in first grade. We were out at recess, and there was perpendicular to the playground, there was an alley that I could see all the way down. And like halfway down, I noticed it was like, but it was orange. It was like an orange Bigfoot, like as if it was an orangutan version of a Bigfoot. But so I see this like furry, you know, like Bigfoot, and I didn't have words for that because I didn't know what Bigfoot was at that time. But this big orange ape thing down in the middle of the alleyway, like, and then it saw me. It was walking and it saw me see it, and then it hid behind some garbage cans, and it was running from garbage can to garbage can, hiding behind the garbage can, looking at me, and then it made a beeline around the corner. I've never seen anything like that before or since. I don't usually talk about this because I think I don't know what to do with this.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it was in a very, very highly populated part of Chicagoland. So we're not like talking about by a lot of forests or anything.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was. I don't know if maybe it was somebody in a monkey suit messing with some kids on a playground. I mean, I have no idea. This was in the mid 80s. So I don't know where to place that one, but yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, when listening to you sound, it's kind of like watching my own life, you know, in a way, you know, with all the different stories. And the thing is, you know, you've had a lot of people experience these things with you.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not just been only you that's had these experiences and seen these things. So
yeah,
I could relate to you when you said you miss them. If they go 6 months and they didn't come around, you miss them or thought, oh no, did I get kicked off the program or whatever. I could go years and not have any weird stuff happen. And I did think about it, and I did wonder, but I almost felt kind of like stranded or abandoned. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Most of the time I'd pull myself away. Did you ever find that you just had your fill for a while and you just felt like stepping back? Did you ever feel like that?
Well, I definitely did, but I didn't have any choice in it. So
yeah, no, we know. Yeah, we don't.
I mean, that one time when I said out loud, like, if you keep doing this to me, I'm going to go crazy. That was like my breaking point for all the physical stuff. And it in large part that ended at that time. I still had a ton of crazy stuff and, you know, different abduction. I had a lot of missing time. I still have a ton of missing time. I just don't remember what happens during that missing time. But yeah, I mean, there's been times, I mean, to be honest, I spent 13 years basically as a hermit because I just couldn't cope with what was going on with me. And so I didn't go out, like, up until recently. It was right around 2020 when I actually started getting out and doing stuff again. So yeah.
And I'm so glad you did, because that's when we got to meet in Michigan.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you know, you can tell. Don't you notice? I mean, let me ask you, do you feel like as you've gotten older, not that you're older or anything, but, you know, as you get older, do you feel like you have you acquire more gifts, so to speak, or abilities that you didn't have when you were younger? And I wonder sometimes if it doesn't have something to do with the experiences that we have. You know what I mean? Like almost like psychic abilities with, you know, or a sense of feeling people, or even other kinds of things. You notice things like that with yourself?
Yeah, I do notice it. I can't say that it has evolved as I gotten older. These were all things that I was taught by them when I was a child, and I never really lost it. I actually have to say that it seemed to be that my abilities were strongest right at puberty.
What sort of things did they teach you?
Well, okay. So different ways to like read people's minds, which I have to say, in real life, when I'm awake, I don't really have full control over any of these things. Like it comes and goes.
Yep, I know that.
Yeah. So it's not like, I'm not like, oh, I can tell you your future and it's, it's going to be 100%. Like there's no way. Like I'd be out there winning the lottery right now. Like, I mean,
yeah, I'd already be on a cruise.
Exactly. So, but I get senses about things. Like I'll feel like if there's a bad situation, I know to get out of there. I've done, a ton of traveling solo, and I haven't, knock on wood, I haven't had anything bad happen to me during that. And it's a lot of it was because I could just read situations really, really well. And I feel like that was part of it. Again, I know I'm amongst friends, but it's hard for me even to say this stuff out loud because it's so bizarre, but I accurately predicted 9/11, Katrina, and COVID decades beforehand. So I feel like that was something that they showed me, was stuff from the future. I had a reoccurring dream ever since I was a kid of 4 different instances, and 2 of them come true. And it's really scary that 2 of them haven't, because 2 of them have. And so I'm worried that these other 2 things are going to happen at some point. Mm-hmm. But I had a reoccurring dream that there was, and this started again when I was 5 or 6. Like most of the stuff, the big stuff started when I was between 4 and 8. So this started, around that time. I was really young. It was really scary for me at the time, but I had a reoccurring nightmare that one of them was that there were guys jumping off of a burning skyscraper with suitcases in their hands. And it made no sense to me until I saw the footage from 9/11.
Yeah.
And then I said, oh my goodness, that was what I dreamed about over and over again, is exactly the same, like a building on fire with guys in suits and suitcases jumping off of it. And so the other dream I had was that I was in a city where in the dream, this was a dream. So in the dream, there was chicken noodles. There was a flood of chicken noodle soup, and it went all the way up to the roofs of all the houses, and people were stuck in the attics of the houses, and they were going around in boats. And then when I saw Katrina, the footage from Katrina, I was like, oh my goodness, that is exactly the same thing I saw in my dream. It was just a little bit different. So those 2 things were things that I had recurring dreams since the 80s that then came true, in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. The other 2 recurring dreams I had was there was one where I was in the suburbs of Chicago, but I could see downtown from where I was. And where I grew up in Berwyn, you could see down like the Loop, the big buildings where I grew up. And so in that dream, I saw either nuclear warheads or asteroids like heading to the city. And I was running into a fallout shelter. That hasn't happened yet. Thank goodness. Hopefully it ever does. The other one I had was that I was in the Pacific Northwest and there was a volcano that blew, and it got into a major city, and there were people jumping into a river to get away from the lava. So that was the 4th reoccurring dream that I have that has not yet come true, but it's just really crazy to me that Katrina and 9/11 did. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then as far as this past pandemic, for like maybe 15 years, I just had this sense that there was a pandemic coming, and I just kept telling people, especially my ex. I told her a lot. And so, yeah, I do have psychic ability, obviously, because I was able to I couldn't say this is exactly when it's happening, where it's going to happen, but after the fact, I was like, oh, this is that thing that I've been seeing since I was a kid. Mm-hmm. Right. I have a ton of synchronicities. Like, and I don't know if that's just because I pay more attention to these, weird, odd things, because I have so many odd things happening to me. Mm-hmm. But when I was in my early teens, I was able to I was able to successfully use telekinesis. So I could actually move stuff, like small things, small metal things. I can make like coins move, paper clips. Now I would practice like a lot because I was really into it at that time. It was when I was first discovering for real, like grasping what was going on with me. And I was like, okay, I remember doing all these things. I'm going to try to like, see if I can do this in real life. And a lot of the times it worked. And I had a friend that saw me do it once when I was,
I do the same thing. I think that experiencers are we're like that.
Yeah.
Most of us don't talk about it very much because, it feels kind of weird because it sounds weird, to somebody that doesn't understand, who hasn't had these experiences. Yeah. But I 100% get all of it. So Yeah, and even here I'm a grown ass 65-year-old woman, and I'm playing around with this thing I made recently with the pin and some aluminum foil with the glass dome over it, like a radiograph or whatever they call that you can spin around. Yeah, I do that too. I think that's just part of being who we are, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just recently spoke out publicly for, wasn't the first time?
Yep.
How did that feel?
It felt amazing. I spoke at Michigan MUFON's in-person May meeting on the 5th, and it was really liberating. I was extremely nervous beforehand.
I was going to ask if you were nervous.
Oh my goodness. I didn't think I'd be able to do it. I was shaking. But the second I got up and started talking, like all of my fears just went away. And I just, kept talking, much like what's happening right now. I was really nervous before we started doing this, but it seems to be going good now. It was really great. And it seemed like I really connected with a lot of people in the audience, and there was a lot of great question and answer back and forth, which I thought was really great. In that crowd, I didn't expect anybody to be like, oh no, you're not telling the truth, because it's MUFON. But yeah, it was really good. It felt empowering. And like I said, I feel like I have a calling to do this recently. And so, it just feels like something that I'm supposed to be doing.
So you're going to do it again then?
Yeah, I hope to.
I'm glad. I did not get to see you, but I heard good things.
Thank you. So, yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm. Are you you're gonna be in Michigan in September? Are you?
Of course. Yeah.
You're not gonna speak though, are you?
No. Maybe. No, just kidding.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful when experiencers speak up and talk and do it unafraid. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, I get nervous. I could be talking about the weather and I get nervous standing up there. But as far as what I'm talking about, I am not ashamed of who I am. I am who I am. This is what I was made to be. So, I'm going to stand up there, and if somebody wants to laugh at me, okay, go ahead. Do what you got.
I laugh at you every day.
I don't care.
Come on now.
Do what you
I laugh
do.
at you all the time.
And I want to
get up there and own that shit,
Yeah.
I want to say kudos to you, Deb. I think it's so courageous that you've been doing this for as long as you have. I think it's great that you've allowed your story to be out there, for as long as it has. And you've done such amazing work within the experiencer community, helping out people like me. Your group, your experiencer support group, was one of the first groups that I joined, and it made a big difference in my life. So I want to say thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful to be able to help anybody and help everybody, folks like me, especially, and I want to help the world to wake up and realize that we're not alone. You know what I mean? So, yeah. And that's what you're doing too. And I'm proud of you.
Thank you, Dad.
I know it was probably not easy, but I'm glad to see you doing it, and I hope you keep doing it.
Thank you.
You haven't written any books or anything, have you, yet?
No.
I think maybe you will one day. And if you need any help, just let me know.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Because I think your story is very fascinating, and I think it's one that a lot of people would like to hear and also would benefit from.
Thanks, Deb. Yeah, hopefully. I've started toying with the idea, and I've been trying to get out like some kind of outline to start with for that. Mm-hmm. And it's just, there's just so much. I'm like, I don't know, this is going to be like a 1,200 page book. I don't know how to.
Girl, I already know. Tell me about it. Your life is like mine. My question and answer part of any talk is always my favorite, because I feel like a squirrel. There's so much, and it's so hard for me to focus on one thing.
Yeah.
So when we get to the question and answer part, then I'm actually doing some good. I'm answering questions that people actually want to know. And so that's why I like the question and answer part the best.
Yeah, that was my favorite part about speaking, was that being able to educate people that sincerely wanted to learn about it.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know this for sure yet, but I might be on the experiencer panel in Houghton.
I hope so. That'd be amazing.
I would love that. So
I wish Greg would come up to Houghton, but it's a long ass drive. I don't.
where are you at,
I'm
Greg?
closer to. I'm probably 7 miles north of the state line of Indiana, Kentucky.
Okay.
Yeah, he's down real south now. He used to be.
Yeah.
We used to live a lot closer, but then he moved away, and I got bumped to second shift, and that's why NPR kind of went on a 12-year hiatus. But we're
Right.
back now. He's back in Indiana, and I'm retired. So hey ha.
Nice.
Yeah. So, but anyway, is there anything else that you want to share with the people that are here with us tonight, our listeners?
I just wanted to say thank you for anybody tuning in, and I appreciate them listening to my story, and that I know that I've said a lot of strange things tonight, but just listen with an open mind, because this is what has truly happened to me in my life, and I'm just telling it like it happened. So
I think that's one of the real good things about the people that follow the show and watch the YouTube content, and I think they all have that open mind mentality that we're not here to judge. We're here to listen to your story. We're here to listen about you and find out what you've experienced, and watch Greg make a fool of himself. And
and that's what I love. See, there's 1,000,001 podcasts out there now on paranormal and UFO stuff, and but and we have had a couple researchers on here, but for the most part, I love it when our guests are experiencers, because I love that we give them a platform so that they can come and tell their story, and they can do it in a safe space where they're not judged, no matter what kind of story they have, even if I've not experienced what they've experienced, or even if I'm not quite sure about it. I want them to be comfortable to come here and express themselves and get out there and get used to talking about it. So,
right.
that's why I was so happy when you said you would come on, because I know it's kind of new for you, and I wanted you to be able to have this experience and have a good one, on here with us, because I think you're going to do wonderful things.
Thanks.
For a lot of people in the future. Yeah. So I'm really excited that you were willing to come on and talk with us.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
Right. So do you have socials that people can find you on, or no? Or
yeah. So I have an Instagram page, which is Extraterrestrial Nicolle. That's Nicolle with 2 L's. So Nicolle. Extraterrestrial Nicolle. And you can hit me up, DM me there if you wanted to ask any questions, or if you're an experiencer yourself and you wanted somebody to talk to, please feel free to reach out to me.
Right. For sure. If you need help, reach out. That's what you got to do.
Yep.
You can't make it on your own.
Nope.
Right.
But, I mean, there's strength in numbers.
Right. Yeah. So, all right, Nicolle, thank you for coming on the show with us tonight.
Thank you, guys.
It was really interesting to hear you talk and tell your story. You're welcome to come back anytime you want. Just let Deb know.
Cool.
Yep.
And we'll hook that. I was going to say a bad word.
Don't behave.
I stopped.
This ain't Skype no more, son.
Don't threaten me with a good time. All right, so you guys, we're at the end of the show. We want to thank you for hanging out with Midwest Paratalk Radio here tonight and coming and listening to Nicolle talk. And remember, you can check us out on our old videos, youtube.com / at Midwest Paratalk Radio. You can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, missing one, iHeartRadio. I forgot that one. And just regular podcasts. Come check us out. We have a good time, and we'll see you next Thursday night, 9 p.m. East, 8 Central, here on the Midwest Paratalk Radio Network.
See ya.